My name is Eve. I'm 63 years old, and what I discovered in my own home shattered everything I believed about the people I love. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I thought I understood pain, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment when the man I'd spent 37 years loving looked me in the eyes and told me I was too old to be loved anymore, that my time was over, that I should be grateful he'd stayed as long as he did. Can you imagine? Can you imagine giving someone the best years of your life, sacrificing your dreams, your body, your youth, only to be told you're expired? Like milk left too long in the fridge? Like something that's outlived its usefulness? But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what came after. The worst part is what I found out. The worst part is that I almost didn't survive the truth. My hands are shaking even now as I tell you this. Even after everything that's happened, after all the tears I've cried and all the nights I've spent staring at the ceiling wondering how my life became this nightmare, I still feel it. That crushing weight in my chest, that rage that burns so hot it turns cold, that pain that never really goes away, no matter how much time passes. But what I saw that night, I'll never forget it. It replays in my mind like a horror film I can't turn off. Every detail, every word, every cruel, calculated moment of it. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. It helps me know someone out there still believes in stories like this. It helps me know I'm not alone in this pain. Because God knows, I've felt alone for so long, so desperately alone. And if my story can reach even one person who needs to hear it, then maybe all this suffering will have meant something. So please, stay with me. This is going to hurt, but I need to tell it. I need someone to hear what happened to me. There was a time when I thought I had everything, when I believed in fairy tales and happy endings and the promise that love conquers all. How naive I was. How beautifully, tragically naive. Richard and I met when I was 26 years old. He was 28, charming, ambitious, full of dreams about the life we'd build together. He had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, like I was precious, irreplaceable. He'd hold my hand and tell me I was his forever, and I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. We got married that same year. A small ceremony, nothing fancy, but it was perfect. I wore my mother's dress, and Richard cried when I walked down the aisle. He actually cried. He told me later that he couldn't believe someone as beautiful as me would choose someone like him. Can you imagine? The irony of that now makes me want to scream. We built a life together. A good life. Or so I thought. 2 children, Sarah and Michael. A house in the suburbs with a garden I spent years cultivating, planting roses and lilies and all the flowers that reminded me of hope and growth and beauty. Richard worked hard, climbing the corporate ladder at the telecommunications company. I worked too, teaching elementary school, shaping young minds, coming home exhausted but fulfilled. Our mornings were routine, comfortable. I'd wake up at 6, make coffee the way Richard liked it, strong, black, no sugar. I'd prepare breakfast while he showered, and we'd sit together at the kitchen table, talking about our days ahead, sharing little jokes, touching hands across the worn wooden surface. Such simple moments, such precious, ordinary moments that I took for granted. After the kids grew up and moved away, Sarah to Seattle with her husband, Michael to Boston for his career, it was just the 2 of us again, and I actually thought this was our time, our golden years. The reward for all the hard work, all the sleepless nights with sick children, all the arguments about money and schedules and whose turn it was to take out the trash. I thought we'd finally get to enjoy each other, travel, rediscover the romance that had gotten buried under decades of responsibility. I was so stupid. Richard would come home from work, and I'd have dinner ready. We'd eat together, watch our favorite shows, go to bed at the same time. Every Saturday morning, we'd go for walks in the park. Every Sunday, we'd visit the farmer's market and buy fresh vegetables and flowers. It was peaceful, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. I remember feeling grateful. Actually grateful. I'd look at my friends who were divorced or widowed or stuck in obviously miserable marriages, and I'd think, I'm lucky. Richard still loves me. We still have each other. I'd catch glimpses of us in mirrors as we passed two people growing old together, gray hair and laugh lines and bodies that didn't quite work the way they used to, and I'd feel this warm sense of accomplishment. We'd made it. We'd beaten the odds. What a fool I was. What a blind, trusting fool. But soon, I started noticing small things that didn't make sense. Little cracks in the perfect picture I'd painted for myself. Things that my mind tried to explain away, tried to rationalize, because accepting what they might mean was too terrifying to contemplate. And those small things? They were about to tear my entire world apart. It started with his phone. Such a cliché, right? But clichés become clichés for a reason. They're true. They happen. They destroy lives every single day. Richard had always been casual about his phone. He'd leave it on the counter, unlocked, face up. I could walk by and see his messages, his emails, whatever. Not that I ever looked, mind you. I trusted him. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? 37 years of marriage. 37 years of fidelity and partnership and shared dreams. You don't throw that away. You don't risk that. Or so I thought. But around 6 months before everything fell apart, he started keeping his phone face down. He'd place it screen side down on the table during dinner. He'd take it with him to the bathroom. He'd keep it in his pocket instead of leaving it on the bedside table like he always had. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was worried about scratching the screen. Maybe he was getting more spam calls and didn't want to be disturbed. The mind is so desperate to avoid pain that it will manufacture any excuse, any explanation, rather than face the truth that's staring it right in the face. Then came the password. One evening, about 4 months before the end, I picked up his phone to check the time mine was charging upstairs, and I saw he'd added a passcode, 6 digits where there had been none before. When did you add a password? I asked him. Casual, not accusing. Just curious. He barely looked up from his laptop. Work requires it now. New security policy. All employees have to have passcodes on their devices. It sounded reasonable. It sounded perfectly logical. So I accepted it. I smiled and nodded and handed him back his phone and ignored the tiny voice in my head that whispered, "Liar." But the changes kept coming. Small and subtle and insidious. He stopped smiling at me the way he used to. You know that smile? The one that reaches the eyes? The one that says, I see you, I know you, I love you? That disappeared. When he looked at me now, his eyes were distant, empty. Like he was looking through me rather than at me. Like I'd become invisible, like I'd become nothing. He stopped touching me. Not dramatically. Not in a way I could point to and say, look, something's wrong. But the casual intimacies that had marked our marriage for decades just evaporated. No more hand on my shoulder as he passed behind my chair. No more quick kiss on the forehead when he left for work. No more reaching for my hand while we watched television. The physical distance between us grew wider and colder until I felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. And he stopped looking me in the eyes. This was the worst part, somehow. The eyes are supposed to be the window to the soul, right? But Richard's windows had shutters on them now, locked tight. When I'd try to make eye contact during conversation, during dinner, during those increasingly rare moments when we were actually in the same room together, he'd look away, at his phone, at the television, at anything but me. "Richard, is everything okay?" I asked him one night, maybe 3 months before the end. We were in bed, lying side by side in the dark, separated by what felt like miles of cold sheets. "Everything's fine," he said, his voice flat and distant. "Why do you ask? You just seem distant lately, preoccupied. Is something wrong at work?" "Work is fine. Everything is fine, Eve. You worry too much." And that was it. Conversation over. He rolled away from me, giving me his back, and I lay there in the darkness feeling like I was drowning, feeling like I was losing something precious and I didn't know how to hold on to it, feeling like my husband was slipping away from me one day at a time and there was nothing I could do to stop it. My friends noticed too. Linda, my best friend of 40 years, pulled me aside after book club one evening. "Is Richard okay?" she asked, her voice careful, concerned. "He's fine." "Why?" "I saw him last Tuesday at the grocery store. I called his name 3 times, but he just walked right past me, like he didn't hear me, like he was in another world. He's been stressed at work," I said automatically, defending him even as that voice in my head got louder. "You know how he gets when there's a big project." Linda looked at me for a long moment, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. Pity? Concern? Knowledge she didn't want to share? "Just be careful, Eve. Okay? Just pay attention." But I didn't want to pay attention. I wanted everything to go back to normal. I wanted my husband back. I wanted to wake up from this weird, unsettling dream where the man I loved had become a stranger. Then came the late nights. Richard had always kept reasonable hours. He'd come home by 6:30, maybe 7 if there was traffic. But suddenly, he was working until 9, 10, sometimes 11 o'clock. "Big project," he'd say when he finally came home, exhausted and distant. "Lots of overtime. You know how it is." I'd have dinner waiting for him. I'd reheat it in the microwave, plate it carefully, sit with him while he ate, even though I'd already eaten hours before, trying to maintain some semblance of togetherness, trying to keep our marriage alive through sheer force of will. He barely spoke during these late dinners, just ate mechanically, his mind somewhere else, someone else. And then there was the cologne. Richard had worn the same cologne for 30 years, a woody, masculine scent I'd bought him for our first anniversary and he'd loved so much he never switched. It was his smell, his signature. The scent I'd bury my nose in when I hugged him, the scent that clung to his pillow, the scent that meant safety and home and love. But about 2 months before everything exploded, he started wearing something different, something younger, sharper, more expensive. "New cologne?" I asked, trying to sound pleasant, supportive, not suspicious. "Yeah. The old one was discontinued. This was on sale." Lie. The old one wasn't discontinued. I'd seen it at the department store just last week. "It's nice," I said, even though something about it made my stomach turn, even though every instinct I had was screaming that this wasn't about cologne at all. This was about becoming someone new, someone I didn't know, someone who didn't want to smell like the man who'd been married to me for 37 years. Until one night, I saw something that made my heart stop. It was a Thursday evening. Richard said he was working late again. I was cleaning out his jacket pockets before taking his suits to the dry cleaner, something I'd done 1,000 times before without thinking twice about it. And in the inner pocket of his navy blazer, I found a receipt. Dinner for 2 at Antonio's. Antonio's, the most romantic Italian restaurant in the city, the place where Richard had proposed to me all those years ago. $732. Wine. Appetizers. 2 filet mignons. Dessert. The date on the receipt was 3 nights ago, Tuesday. The night Richard said he was working late and came home at 11 o'clock smelling like that new cologne and wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood there in our bedroom, holding that receipt, and my hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped it. My vision blurred. My breath came in short, painful gasps. Because Richard and I hadn't been to Antonio's in over a year. We definitely hadn't been there on Tuesday, and we definitely hadn't spent $700 on dinner. So who had he been with? Who was worth $700? Who was worth lies and new cologne and distant eyes and locked phones? I sat down on the edge of our bed, that receipt burning in my hand like evidence of a crime I didn't want to believe had been committed, and for the first time, I let myself think the thought I'd been running from for months. My husband was having an affair. No. No, 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 no. Not Richard. Not my Richard. Not the man who'd held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies. Not the man who'd sat beside my hospital bed when I had my hysterectomy, holding a cup of ice chips and stroking my hair. Not the man who'd promised me forever on our wedding day and had kept that promise for 37 years. This had to be something else. There had to be an explanation. My mind raced, desperate, grasping at any possibility that wasn't the one that was tearing my heart into pieces. Maybe it was a business dinner. Maybe he'd taken a client to Antonio's and forgot to mention it. Maybe it had slipped his mind. Maybe. But $700? And why wouldn't he tell me about it? Why would he hide the receipt in his jacket pocket instead of leaving it out for tax purposes like he did with all his business expenses? Maybe it was for someone else. Maybe he was planning a surprise for our anniversary, even though our anniversary wasn't for 4 more months. Maybe he was organizing something for Sarah's birthday, even though Sarah's birthday was in February and this was October. I was lying to myself. I knew it even as I did it, but the alternative was too devastating to accept. The alternative meant my entire life was a lie. It meant the man I'd trusted with everything, my body, my heart, my future, my very identity, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. I couldn't breathe. The walls of our bedroom felt like they were closing in on me. I put the receipt back in his jacket pocket, my hands trembling, and went downstairs. I poured myself a glass of wine, then another, trying to drown the thoughts that were screaming in my head. When Richard came home that night, I watched him, really watched him, looking for signs, looking for proof, looking for anything that would either confirm or deny what I was terrified might be true. He kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory peck that felt more like obligation than affection. "How was your day?" he asked, opening the refrigerator and pulling out a beer. "Fine," I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow in my own ears. "How was yours?" "Long. Exhausting. I'm going to take a shower and head to bed." He didn't ask about my day. He didn't notice I'd been drinking, even though I rarely had more than 1 glass of wine and I was clearly on my 3rd. He didn't notice my red eyes or the way my hands shook as I gripped my wine glass. He didn't notice me at all. I wanted to confront him. The words were right there, burning on my tongue. I found the receipt. "Who were you with? Who is she?" But terror stopped me, because once I asked the question, once I opened that door, everything would change. Once I knew for certain, I could never unknow it. My marriage, my life, my identity as Richard's wife, it would all be over, and I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to lose everything. So I said nothing. I sat there with my wine and my fears and let him walk away. I told myself I was being paranoid. I talked to myself like I was crazy, like I was imagining things. "You're being ridiculous, Eve. You're 63 years old and you're acting like a jealous teenager. Richard loves you. He's always loved you. This is just a rough patch. All marriages have them. But the doubt wouldn't leave. It grew, day by day, taking up more and more space in my head until I couldn't think about anything else. I'd be teaching my students, and suddenly I'd find myself wondering where Richard was, who he was with, what he was doing. I'd be grocery shopping and I'd see couples holding hands and I'd want to scream at them, "It's a lie! Love is a lie! He'll leave you when you get old and your body sags and you're not new and exciting anymore." I stopped sleeping. I'd lie awake next to Richard, listening to him breathe, studying his face in the darkness, trying to see the young man I'd married, trying to understand when he'd changed, when I'd stopped being enough for him. I stopped eating. Food tasted like ash in my mouth. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. Richard didn't notice. He didn't notice anything about me anymore. I called Sarah one night, desperate for what? Reassurance? Permission to investigate? Someone to tell me I wasn't going insane? "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, immediately picking up on the strain in my voice. "Nothing, sweetheart. I just wanted to hear your voice." "Mom, really, I'm fine. How are you? How's Daniel?" "Mom, you're not fine. I can hear it. What's going on?" I almost told her. The words were right there, crowding behind my teeth, desperate to get out. "I think your father is cheating on me. I think he's been lying to me. I think our entire marriage might be a sham." But I couldn't. I couldn't put that burden on her. I couldn't make her choose sides. I couldn't destroy her image of her father based on a receipt and a feeling and a series of changes that might mean nothing at all. "Just a little stressed," I finally said. "Work has been overwhelming. You know how it is at the end of the semester. Are you sure? You sound—" "I don't know, Mom. You sound different." "I'm fine, baby. Really. I should let you go. Give Daniel my love." I hung up before she could press further, and I sat there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, where I'd helped my children with homework, where I'd shared countless intimate moments with my husband, and I cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal and wounded. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen and I had nothing left. When Richard came home, I was composed, calm. I'd washed my face and put on makeup to cover the redness. I'd made his favorite dinner. I smiled at him like nothing was wrong. Like my world wasn't crumbling. Like I wasn't dying inside. "You're imagining things?" I told myself that night, and the next night, and the night after that. "You're being paranoid. You're being crazy. Stop it, just stop it." But the next morning, the evidence was right in front of me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I woke up early that morning. Richard was still sleeping, his back to me as always now, and I lay there watching the early dawn light filter through our curtains. My heart was pounding. My hands were clammy with sweat, because I'd made a decision during the long, sleepless hours of the night. I was going to find out the truth. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep drowning in doubt and fear and paranoia. I needed to know, even if it destroyed me, even if it confirmed my worst nightmares. I needed to know. Richard's phone was on his nightstand, face down as always. He was deeply asleep. He'd always been a heavy sleeper. Could sleep through anything. I'd teased him about it for years. "A bomb could go off and you wouldn't wake up," I'd say, laughing. Now, that trait that I'd once found endearing was going to be my opportunity. My hand shook as I reached for his phone. My breath came in quiet, shallow gasps. What was I doing? This was insane. This was a violation of privacy. This was necessary. I picked up the phone carefully, so carefully, and held it close to my chest as I slipped out of bed. Richard didn't stir. I crept to the bathroom and locked the door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my rib cage. 6 digits. I needed 6 digits. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect passcode. I tried his birthday. Incorrect passcode. I tried the kids' birthdays, our address, the last 4 digits of his social security number. Incorrect. 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 Panic rose in my throat. I had maybe one more try before the phone locked me out, before some security feature kicked in, before Richard would know I'd tried to access his phone. And then, on some terrible instinct, I tried a date I'd seen on a document on his desk last week. A date I'd noted because it seemed random, meaningless. The 15th of April 2098. The phone unlocked. My stomach dropped, because I knew that date. April 15th, 1998. That was the day Sarah was born. Our daughter's birthday. He'd changed his passcode to our daughter's birthday, but he hadn't told me. Why? Why would he do that and not tell his own wife? Unless he'd told someone else. Unless someone else needed to know how to get into his phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I sat down on the bathroom floor, my back against the cold tile wall, and opened his messages. There were the usual things. Texts from work colleagues. A message from Michael about Thanksgiving plans. Group texts from old college friends. Nothing suspicious. Nothing. And then I saw it. A contact saved only as A. Not a name, just a letter. Who saves a contact as just a letter? I clicked on it. The messages were deleted. Recently deleted. By the look of it, the conversation showed only messages from the last 2 days, but what was there made my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you tonight. From A. From 2 nights ago. Richard's response, me too. Same place. Yes, 8 p.m. Don't be late. I'm wearing that thing you like. I thought I might vomit. Right there on the bathroom floor, I thought I was going to be sick. That thing you like. Wearing something for him. Meeting him at 8 p.m. while I sat at home like an idiot, waiting for him, warming up his dinner, trusting him. 2 nights ago. Thursday. The night he said he was working late and didn't come home until almost 11. The night he'd showered immediately when he got home, even though he usually showered in the mornings. The night he'd barely spoken to me, just kissed my cheek and went to bed. I scrolled further, desperate to see more, to know more, even though every message was a knife in my heart. That was amazing. From yesterday afternoon. You're incredible. Richard's response, you make me feel young again. Young. 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 The word echoed in my head, each repetition like a hammer blow. She made him feel young. I made him feel old. I reminded him of aging, of mortality, of the years passing by. I was the weight around his neck, the anchor holding him to a life he apparently didn't want anymore. And she, whoever she was freedom, youth, excitement. How old was she? 25? 30? Young enough to be his daughter? Young enough to make a 65-year-old man feel virile and desirable and alive? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. I wanted to march into our bedroom and shake Richard awake and force him to explain, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. But I didn't. Because I needed more. I needed to know everything. I needed evidence. I needed proof that would hold up when I inevitably had to explain to our children why their parents were getting divorced after 37 years of marriage. So I went to his photo gallery. And what I found there, God help me, what I found there nearly stopped my heart. Photos, dozens of them, carefully hidden in a folder labeled Work Docs, like I was too stupid to look there, like I was too trusting to ever investigate. Her. The woman who was destroying my marriage. She was young, maybe 35 if that. Long, dark hair, perfect skin, a body that hadn't been stretched by pregnancy or softened by age. In the photos, she was wearing lingerie, red lace, black silk. Things I hadn't worn in years because I was too self-conscious, too aware of my sagging skin and my stretch marks and my body that had the audacity to age. And in some of the photos, Richard was with her, kissing her, touching her, looking at her with an expression I remembered from our early days. Hunger, desire, love. I sobbed. Right there on the bathroom floor, clutching his phone, I sobbed. Deep, ugly, painful sobs that I had to muffle with my hand because Richard was right outside, sleeping peacefully while my entire world was being incinerated. But I couldn't stop looking. I scrolled through photo after photo, torturing myself, each image burning into my memory like a brand. There was one of them at Antonio's, our restaurant, the place where he'd proposed to me, and she was wearing a red dress, and he was looking at her like she hung the moon. There was one of them in what looked like a hotel room, and he had his arms around her, and they were both laughing. There was one. I couldn't look anymore. I couldn't bear it. I heard Richard stirring in the bedroom. "Eve?" he called out, his voice heavy with sleep. "You okay in there?" I scrambled to my feet, deleted the browsing history so he wouldn't know I'd seen the photos, and put the phone down on the counter. "I'm fine," I called back, and my voice only shook a little. "Just feeling a little off. I'll be out in a minute." I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was blotchy and red. My eyes were swollen. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who'd just discovered her husband was betraying her with someone young enough to be his daughter. I splashed cold water on my face. I took deep breaths. I reminded myself that I needed to be smart about this. I needed a plan. And slowly, through the haze of pain and rage and heartbreak, a plan began to form. That evening, after Richard left for work and God, how that word made me want to scream now, I went to the electronics store. I bought a small camera, one of those nanny cams, the kind people use to watch their babysitters or monitor their homes. It was easy to set up, the young man at the store assured me. Just download the app, place the camera, and I could watch from anywhere. I came home and set it up in our bedroom, hidden in a decorative box on the bookshelf, pointed right at the bed. Our bed. The bed where we'd made love, where we'd conceived our children, where we'd slept side by side for 37 years. If Richard brought her here and some terrible instinct told me he would, told me he already had, I would have proof, video proof. Undeniable, court admissible, destroy him in the divorce proof. My hands shook as I positioned it. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Was I really doing this? Was I really spying on my own husband? But what choice did I have? He'd left me none. He'd taken away my trust, my security, my belief in our marriage. He'd turned me into this person suspicious, sneaking, setting up cameras in her own home to catch her husband in the act of betraying her. That night, I pressed record and waited. 3 days. That's how long I waited. 3 days of pretending everything was normal. 3 days of making dinner and smiling at Richard and sleeping beside him while rage and pain consumed me from the inside out. 3 days of checking the camera app on my phone every hour, terrified and desperate to see something that would confirm what I already knew. And then, on Saturday afternoon, while I was supposedly at my book club, it happened. I'd told Richard I was going out. Book club at Linda's house, I'd said. Would be back around 6. He'd barely looked up from his laptop when I told him, just nodded absently and said, "Okay, have fun." But I didn't go to Linda's. I went to the coffee shop 2 blocks away. I sat in a corner booth with my phone, the camera app open, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone in the shop could hear it. At first, nothing happened. The bedroom was empty. I watched our bed, our furniture, the life we'd built together, and I felt hollow. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe. Then Richard appeared on screen. My stomach clenched. He was carrying sheets, fresh sheets. He was changing our bed, making it nice, making it ready. For her. 10 minutes later, she arrived. I saw her walk into frame, and even though I'd seen her in those photos, seeing her in real time, in my bedroom, in my space, was different. It was visceral. It was a violation so profound I couldn't find words for it. She was beautiful. Of course she was beautiful. Young and perfect and everything I wasn't anymore. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Her hair fell in perfect waves. Her makeup was flawless. And Richard, after the way he looked at her, the way he smiled, the way he pulled her close and kissed her, right there in our bedroom, on our bed, in the space that was supposed to be sacred and ours and untouchable. I couldn't breathe. The coffee shop felt like it was spinning. People were talking and laughing around me, oblivious to the fact that my entire life was ending on this phone screen. They undressed each other, slowly, intimately, like lovers who'd done this many times before. This wasn't new. This wasn't a first affair, a one-time mistake. This was practiced, familiar. They knew each other's bodies. They knew what the other liked. How long? How long had this been going on? Months? Years? While I'd been faithful, devoted, trusting, how long had he been doing this? I watched them fall onto the bed, my bed, the bed I'd picked out, the bed where I slept every night and I thought I might die. My chest hurt so badly I wondered if I was having a heart attack. Maybe I was. Maybe my heart was literally breaking, physically shattering into pieces that could never be put back together. I should have stopped watching. I should have closed the app, walked away, preserved what little dignity I had left. But I couldn't. I was frozen, transfixed by my own destruction. They made love. That's what it looked like. Not just sex, not just physical gratification. They were tender with each other, intimate. He touched her face. She ran her fingers through his hair. They looked into each other's eyes. When was the last time Richard had looked into my eyes during sex? When was the last time he'd touched me tenderly? When was the last time we'd made love instead of just going through the mechanical motions before rolling over and going to sleep? I couldn't remember. And that realization hurt almost as much as watching him with her. Afterwards, they lay together, tangled in sheets that I would eventually wash, in a bed that would never feel clean again. They talked. I couldn't hear what they were saying, the camera didn't have audio, but I could read their body language. She was laughing at something he said. He was stroking her arm absently, affectionately. They looked happy, comfortable, like this was where they both wanted to be. Like I didn't exist. Like our marriage didn't exist. Like 37 years meant nothing. Then Richard checked his watch. He said something to her. She nodded, looking disappointed. They got dressed. He helped her with her zipper. Such a small gesture, but it killed me. I couldn't remember the last time Richard had helped me with anything. He changed the sheets again, efficiently, like he'd done it before, like this was routine. He remade the bed, smoothing out the comforter, arranging the pillows exactly as I always did, covering up the evidence, erasing her presence from our space. She kissed him goodbye at the bedroom door. A long, lingering kiss. His hands cupped her face like she was precious, like she mattered, like she was worth risking everything for. And then she was gone. Richard stood alone in our bedroom for a moment, and even through the camera I could see the expression on his face. Satisfaction, contentment, maybe even love. I froze. My whole world collapsed in a single frame. Everything I'd believed about my life, my marriage, my husband, it was all a lie. A beautiful, carefully constructed lie that I'd been living in for God knows how long. I sat in that coffee shop, surrounded by people living their normal lives, drinking their normal coffee, having their normal Saturday afternoons, and I felt completely untethered from reality. Like I'd slipped into an alternate dimension where nothing made sense anymore. Where the man I'd devoted my life to was a stranger. Where my marriage was a sham. Where I was a fool. The barista asked if I wanted a refill. I stared at her blankly. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. "Ma'am? Are you okay? Was I okay? Was I okay?" My husband had just violated our marriage vows, our bed, our life, and this young woman with her perky ponytail and her cheerful smile wanted to know if I was okay? "I'm fine," I whispered, because what else could I say? Because the truth was too big, too terrible, too devastating to put into words. I finally forced myself to leave the coffee shop. I sat in my car in the parking lot and screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. I beat my fists against the steering wheel until they hurt. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, because I didn't know what else to do, because I couldn't fall apart yet, because I needed to hold myself together just a little bit longer, I drove home. Richard was in the living room when I walked in, watching a football game like it was any other Saturday, like he hadn't just betrayed me in the most intimate way possible, like he hadn't just destroyed everything we'd built together. "How was book club?" he asked, not looking away from the TV. "Book club." Right, I'd said book club. "It was fine," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. "What did you guys read this month?" I couldn't remember. I couldn't think. My mind was full of images, her in my bed, Richard's hands on her body, the way he'd looked at her with love while he looked at me with nothing. "Same as last month," I said randomly. We didn't finish discussing it. He just nodded, still watching the game. He didn't notice that I was falling apart. He didn't notice that I'd been crying. He didn't notice me at all. And that's when I realized something that hurt worse than the affair itself. He didn't care. He didn't love me anymore. Maybe he hadn't for a long time. I'd become invisible to him. A ghost haunting his life. An obligation he was stuck with because divorce was messy and expensive and would require explanation. I was nothing to him. Less than nothing. But what happened next was even worse. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. For 3 days after seeing that video, I moved through our house like a ghost, performing the motions of my life while dying inside. Richard didn't notice. Of course he didn't notice. He was too busy texting her, making plans with her, living his secret life while I drowned in mine. I watched him across the dinner table on Tuesday night. We were eating in silence, as had become our habit. He was scrolling through his phone, probably messaging her, while the food I'd spent an hour preparing grew cold on his plate. And something inside me snapped. "Who is she?" The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Quiet, deadly calm. Richard's head jerked up. His face went pale. "What? Who is she?" Each word was a bullet. Each word was a lifetime of pain compressed into a single syllable. "I don't know what you're talking about." But his hand tightened around his phone. His eyes darted toward the door like he was calculating an escape route. "Don't." My voice was shaking now, all that forced calm evaporating. "Don't you dare lie to me. Not anymore. Not after everything. Who is she?" "Eve! I think you're confused." "I saw you!" The scream tore out of me, raw and primal and full of 37 years of devotion being thrown in my face. I saw you, in our bed, with her. I saw everything." Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backwards. His face went from pale to red, and instead of shame, instead of guilt, instead of remorse, what I saw in his eyes was anger. How dare I confront him? How dare I violate his privacy? How dare I ruin his perfect double life? "You were spying on me?" His voice was incredulous, outraged, like I was the villain in this story. "You were fucking another woman in our bed." I was screaming now, couldn't stop screaming, didn't care if the neighbors heard, didn't care about anything except making him understand the magnitude of what he'd done. "Our bed, Richard. The bed where we conceived our children. The bed where I've slept beside you for 37 years, and you brought her there, you violated everything we had." "What we had," he laughed, actually laughed, cold and cruel and utterly without humor. "What we had, Eve. We haven't had anything for years. You've been sleepwalking through our marriage for so long you didn't even notice it was dead." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling. "That's not true," I whispered. "That's not." "It is true. Look at yourself, Eve. Look at us. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you were interested in anything I had to say? When was the last time you made any effort to be attractive, to be exciting, to be anything other than a tired old woman marking time until death?" Each word was a knife. Each word was carefully chosen to hurt me as much as possible, and they worked. They destroyed me. "I'm the same age as you," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. How broken. "I'm only 2 years younger than you, Richard. We aged together. We were supposed to grow old together. That was the promise." "Well, maybe I don't want to grow old with you." His face was twisted with rage now, or maybe just with truth finally being spoken. "Maybe I'm tired of looking at you and seeing my mother. Maybe I'm tired of feeling dead inside. Maybe I want to feel alive again before it's too late." "So you had an affair." The words felt unreal in my mouth. This conversation felt unreal. This entire nightmare felt like something happening to someone else. "Yes, I had an affair. I'm having an affair. And you know what? I'm not sorry. Allison makes me feel things I haven't felt in decades. She's young, she's beautiful, she's interested in me. She doesn't look at me like I'm a burden or an obligation. She actually wants me. Allison." Her name was Allison. Now the betrayal had a name. Now it was real in a way it hadn't been before. "I want you," I said, and I was crying now, couldn't stop crying, tears streaming down my face like a dam had burst. "I've always wanted you. I've loved you for 37 years. I gave you everything. Everything, Richard. My youth, my body, my entire life. I've been faithful to you every single day of our marriage. And this is what I get? This is how you repay me? By telling me I'm too old? By fucking someone young enough to be your daughter?" "She's 38, he said. Like that made it better. Like 12 years somehow transformed it from pathetic to acceptable. "She's 38 and you're 65. I was screaming again, beyond caring, beyond control. "You're old enough to be her father. You're having a midlife crisis, and I'm the one paying the price. You're chasing youth because you're terrified of death, and you're willing to destroy our entire life together for what? For a woman who'll leave you the second someone younger and richer comes along? For a few more years of feeling like you're not dying? At least I'm living," he roared back. "At least I'm not already dead like you. You gave up, Eve. You gave up on life, and on us, and on yourself. You turned into an old woman and expected me to just accept it. Well, I won't. I refuse to die just because you've decided to." "You said vows," I whispered, and my voice was breaking completely now. You promised. In sickness and in health, for better or worse, till death do us part. You promised me, Richard. I was 28 years old. His hands were shaking, his whole body was shaking. I was a kid, I didn't know what I was promising. I didn't know I'd feel trapped for the rest of my life. I didn't know I'd wake up one day and realize I'd thrown away my youth on someone who'd become everything I never wanted. The silence after those words was deafening. We stood there, on opposite sides of our dining room table, in the house we'd bought together, and filled with memories and love and life, and we looked at each other like strangers, like enemies. I want a divorce, I said. The words came from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere I didn't even know existed, some place of strength I'd forgotten I had. Fine, he said immediately, too immediately, like he'd been waiting for this, like he was relieved. Fine, we'll get a divorce. I'll move out tomorrow. No. I straightened my spine. I wiped my tears. I looked him in the eyes for the first time in months. No, you'll move out tonight. Right now. Get your things and get out of my house. Your house? This is our house. This is my home. Mine. I've taken care of it. I've made it beautiful. I've lived here while you were out fucking Allison in hotel rooms. This is my space and you violated it and I want you out. Now. Maybe he saw something in my face that scared him. Maybe he was just eager to run to her. Maybe he was as tired of fighting as I was. Whatever the reason, he went upstairs. I heard him moving around, opening drawers, the sound of his suitcase being zipped. I stood in the dining room, my hands gripping the table, and I realized I was shaking. My entire body was shaking. I'd just ended my marriage. 37 years, over in a screaming match in our dining room. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. This wasn't the story I'd imagined for us. Richard came down the stairs 20 minutes later with 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. He stopped in the doorway, and for just a moment, he looked uncertain. Sad, even. Like maybe some part of him realized what he was throwing away. Eve. Don't, I said. Just don't. There's nothing you can say, nothing that will make this better. You destroyed us. You destroyed me. And for what? For Allison? For feeling young? I hope it was worth it, Richard. I really do. Because you've lost everything. Your wife, your home, your children's respect. I hope she's worth all of that. The kids will understand, he said. But he didn't sound certain. No, I said. They won't. They'll know what you did. They'll know you betrayed their mother. They'll know you threw away our family for a woman barely older than your own daughter. And they'll judge you for it. They'll never look at you the same way again. His face crumpled. Just for a moment. Then he hardened again, picked up his bags, and walked toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. You're too old for love anyway, Eve. You should be grateful I stayed as long as I did. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him, and I was alone in the house we'd shared for 37 years. I stood there for a long time, maybe hours, maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. I stood in my dining room, surrounded by photos of our life together, wedding photos, baby photos, vacation photos, Christmas photos, anniversary photos, and I felt nothing. I was empty, hollowed out, destroyed. But I was also free. I thought it was over. I thought the worst was behind me. I thought I could begin healing, begin rebuilding, begin figuring out who Eve was without Richard. I thought it was over, but I was wrong. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Richard's lawyer had drawn them up fast, suspiciously fast, like they'd been prepared in advance, like he'd been planning this for longer than I'd known about Allison. The papers outlined his proposed settlement. He wanted to split everything 50-50. The house, the retirement accounts, the savings, everything we'd built together. Never mind that I'd sacrificed my career to raise our children while he climbed the corporate ladder. Never mind that I'd put him through graduate school. Never mind that I'd devoted 37 years to building the life he now wanted to walk away from. 50-50, like we'd contributed equally, like betrayal and loyalty were worth the same. I hired a lawyer. A woman named Margaret who'd been recommended by Linda. Margaret was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, and she listened to my story without judgment. "Do you have proof of the affair?" she asked, her pen poised over her legal pad. "Video," I said, and saying it out loud made me feel dirty, made me feel like the criminal instead of the victim. "I recorded them in our bedroom." Margaret's eyebrows rose. That's definitely proof." "Was this in a one-party consent state?" I nodded. I'd looked it up before I set up the camera. I'd known enough to protect myself legally, even if I couldn't protect myself emotionally. "Good," Margaret said. "That changes things. Adultery affects the settlement, especially when there's proof this blatant. He can't walk away with half of everything when he violated the marriage contract." The marriage contract? Is that what we'd had? A contract? Not a love story, not a partnership, not a sacred bond, just a contract that one party had breached? I was so tired. I was so tired of hurting, of crying, of feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. I barely slept. I barely ate. I lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. My clothes hung off me. I looked like a skeleton, like death, like exactly what Richard had accused me of being, an old woman waiting to die. The kids found out, of course. Richard told them his version first, that we'd grown apart, that it was mutual, that these things just happen sometimes. He made it sound civilized, mature, like we were two rational adults making a rational decision. Then I told them the truth. Sarah cried. My strong, capable daughter who never cried, who'd always been so level-headed and practical, she sobbed over the phone like her heart was breaking. "How could he?" she kept asking. "How could he do this to you? To us?" Michael went silent, dangerously silent. Then he said, "I'll never forgive him for this, never." And I heard in his voice the same rage I felt, the same sense of betrayal, because Richard hadn't just destroyed his marriage, he'd destroyed his children's faith in love, in commitment, in the possibility that people could stay faithful to each other. They stopped talking to him. Both of them. Richard tried to call, tried to explain, tried to make them understand, but they wouldn't listen. Sarah blocked his number. Michael told him he was dead to him. And I watched their relationships disintegrate and felt guilty, even though none of this was my fault, even though I was as much a victim as they were. Richard moved in with Allison. Of course he did. He posted photos on social media, photos of them together, smiling, happy, living their best life while I was dying alone in our house. Photos of them at restaurants, at the beach, at concerts. Her friends commented things like, "You two are so cute," and goals. And I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them he was a liar and a cheater, and that their relationship was built on the broken pieces of my life. But I didn't. Because what would be the point? They wouldn't care. To them, I was just the old wife, the discarded woman, the cautionary tale. To them, Richard and Allison were proof that love could bloom at any age, that it was never too late to find happiness, that sometimes you had to break some eggs to make an omelet. They had no idea what those broken eggs felt like. They had no idea what it felt like to be one of the casualties in someone else's love story. The divorce dragged on for months. Richard fought everything. He wanted the house. He wanted more of the retirement accounts. He wanted, wanted the same way he'd always wanted, the same selfish entitlement that had led him to Allison in the first place. Margaret fought back. She was relentless. She presented the video evidence. She outlined my contributions to our marriage. She showed how I'd sacrificed my earning potential to support his career. She painted him as exactly what he was, a cheating husband who'd violated his vows and wanted to profit from it anyway. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She looked at the evidence, looked at Richard, looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes. Understanding maybe, anger on my behalf. She'd probably seen hundreds of cases like this. Hundreds of women like me, betrayed and discarded and fighting for scraps of the lives they'd built. The settlement will be 70-30 in Mrs. Patterson's favor, she said. Mrs. Patterson keeps the house. Mr. Patterson's retirement accounts will be divided with a larger portion going to Mrs. Patterson to reflect her career sacrifices. Mr. Patterson will also pay alimony for a period of 5 years. Richard's face turned purple. He started to object, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. It was done. It was over. I walked out of that courtroom and I felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. No sense of justice served. Just empty. Because winning the divorce didn't undo the betrayal. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't give me back the 37 years I'd wasted on a man who'd never truly valued me. The house felt huge and empty without Richard in it. I'd thought I'd be relieved to have him gone. But instead I just felt lonely. Lonely in a way I'd never been before. Every room held memories. Every corner whispered reminders of what I'd lost. I tried to move on. I tried to rebuild. I redecorated the bedroom, bought a new bed, painted the walls a different color, trying to erase her presence, trying to make the space mine again. But it didn't work. I still saw them there. I still felt violated every time I walked into that room. Linda suggested I see a therapist. You've been through trauma, Eve. You need help processing it. So I went. I sat in an office with a kind-faced woman named Dr. Chen, and I told her everything. About the marriage, the betrayal, the video, the divorce. About feeling worthless and old and used up. About how Richard's words, "You're too old for love," played on repeat in my head like a curse I couldn't break. "Do you believe that?" Dr. Chen asked me. "Do you believe you're too old for love?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know what I believe anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I was Richard's wife for so long that I forgot how to be just Eve. And now I'm 63 years old and alone and terrified that he was right. That I am too old. That my life is over and all I have left is waiting to die." "Your life isn't over," Dr. Chen said gently. "It's transformed. Against your will, yes. Painfully, yes. But you're still here, Eve. You're still alive. And that means you still have choices. You still have possibilities. You just have to find them." But I didn't want possibilities. I wanted my old life back. I wanted Richard back, not the Richard who'd betrayed me, but the Richard I thought he was, the Richard I'd loved, the Richard who'd promised me forever and made me believe it, that Richard was dead. Or maybe he'd never existed at all. Maybe I'd been loving a fantasy for 37 years. Maybe I'd been so desperate to believe in happy endings that I'd ignored all the signs that mine was rotting from the inside out. And just when I thought life was returning to normal, just when I thought I could start healing, just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom and there was nowhere to go but up, something unexpected happened. 2 months. That's how long Richard's happiness lasted. 2 months of living with Allison, of playing young and in love, of pretending that betraying your wife of 37 years was the path to true fulfillment. Then the calls started. The first one came at 11 o'clock at night. I was in bed, reading, trying to establish new routines, trying to reclaim my life. My phone rang. Richard's number. I declined the call. He'd lost the right to reach me whenever he wanted. He called again. And again. 7 times that night. I finally turned off my phone. The next morning, there were text messages. Eve, please, we need to talk. Eve, I made a mistake. Eve, please answer. I deleted them without responding. Then he showed up at the house. My house now, legally mine. I opened the door and he looked terrible. Like he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hair was disheveled. He looked small, somehow. Diminished. What do you want, Richard? Can I come in, please? Just to talk? No. Say whatever you need to say from right there. He took a deep breath. I made a mistake, Eve. The biggest mistake of my life, Allison and I. It's not working. It's not what I thought it would be. She's not you. And I realize now that you were what I wanted all along. You were what I needed, and I threw it away for nothing, for a fantasy that turned out to be a nightmare. I stared at him. My heart was pounding, but not with hope. With rage. With disbelief at his audacity. Let me guess, I said, my voice cold as ice. She wasn't the adoring young woman you thought she'd be. She expected things from you. She had her own opinions, her own needs, her own life that didn't revolve around making you feel young. Or maybe she met someone else? Someone younger than you, richer than you, better than you in all the ways that matter? His face told me I'd hit close to the mark. It doesn't matter, he said. What matters is I was wrong. I was so wrong, Eve. And I want to come home. I want to fix this. I want us to try again. 37 years, Eve. That has to count for something. We can go to counseling. We can work on things. We can... No. The word hung in the air between us. Simple, final, absolute. Eve, please. You told me I was too old for love, I said, and my voice was shaking, but I kept going. You said I should be grateful you stayed as long as you did. You violated our marriage, our home, our bed. You threw away 37 years for a woman young enough to be your daughter. You destroyed our children's faith in you. You humiliated me. You broke me, Richard. You broke me into so many pieces. I'm still trying to figure out how